Let me ask all of you, what would you say if you were given some time of your life in a recessionary period? I know that you have a lot of cutbacks in your country clubs, especially in professional development, so congratulations for being here and finding the wisdom in coming together. Having said that, let me ask you some questions and then hopefully conclude by lip-syncing 3 Ashley Simpson songs. The question out of the chutes is, do you agree that at the end of the day, it's not what you do, it's who you do it with? Any of you have horses? And have you ever seen a horse? Tough crowd. Do you realize when you put a hard-to-catch horse in the same field with an easy-to-catch horse, most of the time you end up with 2 hard-to-catch horses? In the human experience, you realize when you put a healthy child in the same room with a sick child, most of the time you end up with 2 sick children. Moral of the story, at the end of the day, to be disciplined, to be healthy, to be great, you have to hang around with the disciplined, healthy, and great ones. That's why we join country clubs. We must be willing to pay any price and travel any distance to associate with extraordinary human beings. So with all due respect for those who did not see the wisdom in coming here regardless of the money, if money becomes the topic of conversation, it means the relationship is non-existent and the presentation is weak. So for all of you who are here, congratulations, and I hope you take full advantage of not just the educational opportunities, and I've looked through the program, amazing professional development, but the networking opportunities here, especially for those of you in a recessionary period who have been laid off, looking for employment in the country club world. Obviously, this association is world famous for helping its members find the next place, the opportunity to take it to the next highest ground opportunity in the employment situation. So if you will agree with me that we can't just practice what we preach, we must preach only what we practice. Obviously, the reason why you're here is the same reason why people will join your country club, and the dues will maintain themselves, and in fact, the membership will increase. Not because of money, but because of who you are as individuals, and when we interact with each other, regardless of the situation in Florida here at the Marriott or in your country club, we leave each other saying, I like me best when I'm with you, I want to see you again. So having said that, in my speaker style, I want to take you on an emotional roller coaster ride. I want to share some stories and hopefully yank your chain and then at the same time compliment you, because you are here, in my mind, for one reason. And that is to leave this Marriott hotel different than you were when you arrived. I don't know where your room is. My clothes have gone out of style just since I left my room to come over here to the ballroom. It's so far away. But if I walked that far and you walk that far to interact, hopefully we can validate why we're here and leave here different than we were when we arrived. Which is the second question. Do you believe that? Do you really believe that we can talk about some things in the next few minutes that will actually get us to think differently, get us to feel differently, so that when we leave here, we're different than we were when we arrived? I do. Proof, I was on the program with Henry Winkler, the Fonzie from Happy Days. Clearly one of the funniest guys I've ever met in my lifetime. He decides he wants to take some time off, treat himself to a matinee movie. So he slides in through the side exit door of the theater. As Henry Winkler shuffles himself through the aisle, he finds himself a vacant seat. As Henry Winkler turns to sit down in the chair to look up at the movie screen, the little girl sitting right behind him smiles this giant smile. She points her finger and she slowly says, Fonzie. Henry Winkler immediately snaps into the Fonzie character from Happy Days. Hey, whoa. And the lady sitting next to the little girl passes out. Henry Winkler milks the moment. Whoa, I thought this only happened on TV drama. Hey, how cool is this? Whoa. Theater manager comes out, takes care of the woman's needs. She's lying in the aisle. Cold pack on her forehead. She's asked one question. Why did you pass out? She said, my little girl is autistic. And that is the very first word she has ever spoken in her entire life. You see, you got all kinds of educational sessions outside of this ballroom, but at the end of the day, all the information in the world isn't going to make you successful. It's like the guy who has 3 PhDs, one in philosophy, one in psychology, one in sociology. He doesn't have a job, but at least he can explain why. Knowledge is power. We know that as managers. But knowledge has no heart. Reason leads to conclusions, but it is emotion that leads to action. So we've got to interact with the right people and travel any distance, pay any price to make sure that we have a little belly-to-belly, heart-to-heart, eye-to-eye contact and an experience that will take us to a place we can't take ourselves. I have a conference call on the telephone with Kathy Driggs. Any of you get an opportunity to thank her personally for all the work she's put into this conference, I would hope that you would take advantage of that opportunity. What a sharp lady. After the phone call, I told her I was going to spend about 30 minutes of my speech getting her a raise and then just end with a meaningful poem. In fact, I think she's in the room. We ought to clap and acknowledge her work. On the conference call is a Dr. Jason Koningsfeld. And I'm thinking doctor, so I'm thinking some old guy, and I've got to almost like Lum says, got to put on the tie. I'm glad I got the memo. And I walk in and he's 12. I'm like, come on, man, there's a disconnect here. But when I had my conference call, I don't know how many of you have ever had telephone training, but they ask you questions like, can they hear you smile? And the combination of Jason and the combination with him and Kathy Driggs on the telephone, their emotion came through the phone, their love of this association. The possibility thinking that they taught me about the future of this association was exciting. Then I get a chance to interact with George Carroll just for a couple of minutes. Past president, Irish bloke who has so much going. And I just wanted him to know publicly, George, how much that few minutes meant to me when I asked him, what should I talk about? Any of you know Tony DeRico from St. Louis? Yeah, Tony, yeah. I asked him, what should I talk about? And he clarified my thoughts and kind of validated what I had prepared. But apparently he understands the importance of what it is that you're about and the significance of you being at this conference at this particular time in our history. You see, I welcome all of you from outside of the United States. Anybody here from Europe? Where are you from? England. Spain. ¿Cómo está? Me llamo Gordo Grande. Hey, ¿qué tal? Anybody, where else? Anybody here from Europe? Where were the other hands? There was a couple other ones. Where are you from? Scotland. Scotland. That's funny. I don't really do a good Scottish accent. You're like, we know. Don't offend us anymore. I'm in Hong Kong. I'm sorry to divert. I'm in Hong Kong. And I'm there for 10 days, and I'm starving to death, and I get back to the New World Harbor View Hotel, and there's a big buffet set up in the hotel lobby. And I asked the concierge, is this for the guests? They say, yes. So I'm filling up my plate, and I kind of bumped into this couple, and I overhear them, and they're from Northern Ireland. I said, what a bite you there. I can't believe it. What are you doing over here in Hong Kong? She says, are you from Belfast? I said, no, I'm from the States. She says, what are you doing over here? I said, I'm over here talking to the Hotel Motel Association of Asia. What are you doing over here? She says, get a load of this. Me and my husband, we're over here teaching the wee Chinese lads English. I said, you must be joking. She says, no, but you'd be really proud of us. We have the wee lads trained. Every morning they come in, I say, how you doing? They look at me and say, dead on. Anybody here from South Africa? Where are you from? I'm sorry? Durban. I could have never grown up there. I would have had a spelling problem. Welcome. Even though I'm American, cut and dried, welcome. And we have so many things in common when we start talking about it. It's not enough to practice what we preach. We must preach only what we practice. And regardless of where we're from and regardless of the individuals I've had a chance to interact with prior to this opportunity on your stage, I want you to know I think that the feeling is mutual. It's a global recession, and we're here to figure out how to take it to the next level. With all due respect to you guests of our country, I suppose that the global recession has been caused for the same three reasons, which is intriguing to me. This is the slice in American history where one phase between 2008 and maybe 2011 right now, kind of going into 2011, where in that period of time in our history, in our global history, especially here in American history, we have forever changed the way we save money, lend, borrow, conduct business. In the 1970s, we had an energy-induced recession. We had long lines at the pumps, high gas prices, if you remember that. 1980s and early 1990s, we had a credit-induced recession where we had the failures of the S&Ls and financial institutions ceased to lend, if you remember that. Between 1983 and 1993, we had a housing-induced recession where homes lost value and they traded down. We had interest rates as high as 21%. I'm sure a lot of you remember that. But never in our history have we ever had all three of these causes creating and perpetuating a recession or a depression all at the same time. So now that we've gone through the wilderness, not into the wilderness, Gandhi did not go into the wilderness, Abraham Lincoln did not go into the wilderness, Walt Disney did not go into the wilderness, they went through the wilderness. No matter what our past has been, we have a spotless future. Pain is a signal to grow, not to suffer. Once we learn the lesson the pain teaches us, the pain goes away. Now that we've gone through this recession, what are we going to do about it? And having talked to Tony DeRico ahead of time, he helped me validate what I had prepared, and that is this. Have you heard lately you got to think outside the lines, you got to think outside the box? We've all heard it for the last decade. My response has always been, what if the answers are still in the box? Most people who come to meetings like this come in search of the new answers, when in reality, don't you think we ought to come in search of the right answers? And the right answers have always been right, or we can't call them right. So when talking to Tony, he says, you know what, I think we all know what we need to do. We just need to be reminded about it, and that's why we're here. Plato taught all knowledge is recollection, which means every single time I stand on any stage and I say something hopefully profound and audience members nod your head in agreement, I'm not teaching you anything new. You're just recalling something that you already learned in a previous experience. So in the 4.5 hours that I've been asked to speak, my desire is not to teach you anything new. I just want to remind you about who you are, the potential you have to exceed expectations. And in that knowledge, in that comfort that you already have everything that it takes inside of you to walk out of here and do what you need to do, let's talk. In order for us to understand what I really want to talk about today, let's address a common word that we're all familiar with, change. You know, when I was in high school, they hadn't even invented a PC yet. We didn't even have a personal computer. There was no iPhone, there was no cell phone, there was no iPad. A text was a book we read in school, and a tweet was something that Barbara Walters gave to her dog. Let's talk about change. How many of you are willing to change? How many of you are lying to me? Let's talk here. Not one of us woke up this morning and says, I think I'm going to be different. They say the dog will not move off the nail he is sitting on until the nail starts to hurt enough. So now you have these irrational decisions coming from your board members who never in a million years would make the same decisions in their corporate environment that they're trying to make in your environment. They try to get involved in the day-to-day, which you're an expert in, instead of just sticking to the policy-making decisions that they're supposed to do. So how do you deal with that? Well, let's talk about change. Because before we can get anyone else to change, we better figure out how to do it in our own world, don't you think? Do you agree that change from the outside in is reactive change and it creates pressure? Oh, no, now what? Oh, no, the economy. Oh, no, the recession. Oh, no, the interest rates. Oh no, September 11th here in America. Oh no, this. Oh no, that. Do you agree that change from the outside in is reactive change and it creates a victim mentality? Yeah. What's a victim mentality? We look outside and it's snowing. And we say, what a drag. We look outside and it's raining and we say, what a horrible day. No, it's not. If you live in Los Angeles, California, and it actually rains, it dissipates the smog. You can actually see what you're overpaying for. It's a good thing. But how many of us are guilty allowing something as silly, as weak, as unpredictable, as uncontrollable as weather to change our attitude? And that's the attitude we take towards change because of it. Case in point, I live by Snowbird Ski Resort in Utah. Anybody here from the Salt Lake Country Club? Anybody here from Willow Creek? Anybody here? I need to suck up too bad. When it snows in Utah, we ski. It snowed yesterday before I flew in here. Awesome. Anybody here from the South? Stupid question. Yep. Snowed in Dallas, Texas. I was at the Super Bowl. Ay, ay, ay. Snowed in Atlanta, Georgia. Snowed in Charlotte, North Carolina. When it snows in the South, you crash your cars. Anybody here from the Midwest? Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan. When it snows in the Midwest, you fish. This kills me. Anybody here from California? Oh yeah, we love your country. Awesome country. I was in Malibu Beach when it snowed for the first time. No one had ever seen snow before. All the crazies were out on the sidewalk going. They thought it was cocaine from God. They're like, whoa, dude, I believe I'm going to save this. Buy me a new Porsche on the weekend. Change from the outside in is reactive change, and it creates pressure. So the flip side of that is what this association is about. It's what this conference is about. So do you agree that change from the inside out is proactive change and it creates power? Yeah, and how does it create power? It reminds us that one moment in time changes everything, that no matter what our past has been, we have a spotless future, that we can actually leave this ballroom different than we were when we arrived. And why is that so important? Because outside of these walls, they do not think like we think. Inside of these walls, inside your membership is why you are here, and understanding that will help you perpetuate that feeling and that expectation when you get back to your country club. Case in point, outside of these walls, there's a minimum requirement mediocre society, is there not? Inside these walls, you got to come early, you got to stay late, you got to figure out a way to exceed expectations. You have this generational warfare going on, where you have the older standards in your club where no jeans are allowed, no cell phones, and perhaps it's alienating the younger crowd, the new generation. At some point in our lives, we got to figure out a way to step back and not put all the emphasis on who is right, but on what is right, and allow things to change in the right direction. Outside of these walls, it's minimum requirement everywhere we see. It's mediocrity everywhere we go. And I see it every single time I get on an airplane. For those of you who flew here, did you actually listen to the pre-flight safety demonstration on board the plane? If you did, we got to have a talk. Because anybody who has to be taught how to put on a seatbelt should not be allowed in public unsupervised. And yet every time I get on a plane, no matter how long the flight, they force feed us the same pre-flight safety demonstration, do they not? And the flight attendants do it because they think it's their job. How sad is that? A while ago, I'm on a plane. There's a little girl maybe 5 rows behind us. She's actually saying the pre-flight safety demonstration along with the video. In the event of a decrease in cabin pressure, an oxygen mask will appear. Reach up, tug on the gold cup, place it over your nose and mouth, securing it tightly with an elastic strap. Breathe normally. It's the same in every language. Ay, ay, ay. And the flight attendants stand up and they lie. They lie. They say, we're here for your safety. No, they're not. I survived a plane crash in 1988. Trust me, when you're going down, they are strapped in and screaming just like we are. How dare them say, bring your seat up to the most upright and uncomfortable position. This kills me. Alive, dead. Alive, dead. Alive, dead. Trust me, when you finally come down, 1.5 inches does not make a difference. Just once I want them to give me the microphone and let me tell the folks on board what really happens in an emergency. Ladies and gentlemen, in the event of a decrease in cabin pressure, a little gold cup's gonna fall from the ceiling and conk you right on the head. When you stop screaming, brace yourself for a 200 feet per second vertical dive. And if you're traveling with more than one child, pick your favorite. because you don't have time to make another choice. What happens when we get on a plane and the flight attendant isn't thinking outside the lines? He or she isn't thinking outside the box. They know what it takes to take it to the next level is already inside of them. All they have to do is become more of who they already are. Do we recognize this inside-out commitment to excellence? Yeah. And that's what we celebrate in this association. I'm on Delta Airlines coming into Dallas, Texas. Huge turbulence. We're bouncing all over the sky. We finally land. We bounce, we land. We bounce, we land. We're taxiing to the gate. Flight attendant comes over the PA system. Hi, welcome to Dallas, Texas. If you enjoyed your flight, tell your friends you flew Delta Airlines. If you did not enjoy your flight, tell your friends you flew Southwest. And everybody on the plane goes, huh? And obviously the flight attendant had a great relationship with leadership because she then says, and please remain seated with your seatbelt fastened while Captain Kangaroo bounces us the rest of the way to the gate. That's funny. And is it contagious? Yeah. Elderly woman walking in the aisle right behind me with her cane. She comes to the doorway. You the pilot? Yes, ma'am. Did we really land or did we get shot down? Can your club members, not customers, can your club members, they're family members, can your club members have that experience every single time they come into your space so they leave saying, I like me best when I'm with you, I want to see you again? That's the experience I've had with Alan Lum, watching him walk the premises in his country club in Hawaii. That's the experience I had when I came down here and spoke for the Florida Association. Aaron Herzog Vesciglia. Where are you, Aaron? She came up before I spoke and just said hi, and I just gave her a big hug. What a class lady. I had a chance to talk to Steve Pedersen from Midland Country Club up in Michigan, 2 hours north of Detroit. Had an opportunity to pick some of your brains. Had an opportunity to play Augusta National this last year. What a week. October 23rd, I went up into space. For 3.5 hours, changed my life forever. I might refer to that as it flips out of my mouth. But 3 days later, I teed it up at Augusta National. And I'll tell you what, it's more than golf. I know 80% of your country clubs are golf clubs. You have some yacht clubs. I know some of you are equity clubs. Some of you are not. I understand the demographics of what you are and who you represent. But regardless of what your flagship is, your amenity is, if you have a focus on golf or not, when I stepped into the grounds of Augusta National, I realized it was so much more than golf. It was so much more than anything I'd ever experienced. And that's what we can duplicate in our world if we'll just do it. If we'll just understand the simplicity of what has to take place in order for us to create that ambience and that feeling that this place is special. Not family friendly. I'm sure a lot of you, without stepping on your toes, think that your club is family friendly. In other words, bring your kids and we'll tolerate it. When I talked to Steve Pedersen at Midland, he said that they attribute their magnificent success and growth. They now have a waiting list. They've attracted over 300 new members just in the last couple of years. That his average age now is 45 to 50 years of age. How cool is that? You've already sold your memberships to the baby boomers. Now what do you do? And what he pointed out is the difference between being a family-friendly country club and a family-centered country club, where it's a destination. And they come with a resort atmosphere and feeling that, my goodness, we've got things for everybody, not just put them away, here, we have a kids' corner, but really it's just a Gestapo with some duct tape so you can go do your adult things. But to create an environment like that just excites me. And to exceed the expectation. I don't know how many of you have actually gone to the Masters. Intrigues me how 50, 55,000, perhaps more people in a given day from all different walks of life walk onto that premises, that sacred ground, and yet their expectations are so significantly high that everybody knows that when it comes time for that guy to step up and address his ball, the place goes deathly quiet. That the expectation there is so significant in that particular area that everybody buys into it and appreciates it. Let's talk expectations, because as I look out over this ballroom, you remind me of the level of success that I see every time I walk into a National Football League locker room or team meeting. I've had the privilege of working with most of the teams in the National Football League. What would you say to 53 professional football players who collectively represent over $105 million in annual salary? How do you get them to take it to the next level? Does money motivate them? No, which means money does not motivate us or your members. How do we know that? We'll eventually run out of money. Can you motivate these 53 athletes with benefits and bonuses? No. We think we can buy loyalty. No, we create it. I like me best when I'm with you. I want to see you again. Can you motivate these athletes with rewards and awards? No, and we can't motivate us this way either. And let's talk for a second. I keep using this word motivation. I'm so glad Kevin didn't introduce me as a motivational speaker. He used the word inspiration, because motivational speakers are so shallow. They show up and they say stupid things like, we become what we think about. That's not true. If that was true, I'd have been a woman by the time I was 12 years old. I want to be an inspirational speaker, and you want to be an inspirational club manager so that people actually rise to the occasion. So when we start talking about how can I take the big bucks to motivate these athletes, and I look from this stage across this huge audience, you're in the same category. And I would suspect that when you get back to your club and you look out over your club membership of 450, maybe 500 members, maybe all the way up to 750 members, that you're faced with the same dilemma. How do you get these prima donnas? How do you get these successful folks to take it to the next level and accept this challenge of change? Well, what's worked famously for me will work for you. And obviously you don't have to do the object lesson exercise, but you can share it. Ahead of time, I get the assistant coach and a captain of the team to hold a broomstick 12 inches off the floor. And ahead of time, I get the name of the best, purest athlete on the team. The guy who naturally is just so gifted, he really doesn't work so hard. You know people like this. And isn't it ironic? They're always sitting in the back of the team meeting. They're like, haven't you read the newspaper yet? Don't you know who I am? Hey. So I call him out by name, and sure enough, it takes him 22 and a half minutes to saunter up to the front of the room like he sat on something hot. And as the stud muffin hunk of burning love makes his way to the front of the room, I confront him. Do you think you can jump over that 12-inch high broomstick? And he always says, I say, then do it. So he skips over the 12-inch high broomstick like in your face, and here's the lesson. The question now is, why did you only jump 12 inches high when you and your teammates know you can jump 40 inches high? And the answer is always the same. Because that's all you asked me to do. I'm sure your board has you stretched in both directions. But how can we look at that as a positive instead of as a negative? How can we accept the fact that folks out there are mediocrity thinkers? They are minimum requirement thinkers, which means we have to walk on higher ground or we'll never survive as their leader. Which means that now I can illustrate what I talked about just flippantly. We can't just practice what we preach. We have to preach only what we practice. In a recession, in times of change, you came to the conference. Good for you. Let me just remind you of what you already know and use an illustration that I'm so proud of. I always wear this wristband. I received it from an American soldier in Bagram, Afghanistan. I was invited to go over and speak to the troops, Iraq, Afghanistan, and some of the other countries in Southwest Asia and the Middle East. I was there for 16 days, spoke 23 times on 12 bases and out on the USS Harry S. Truman aircraft carried over 30,000 of our bravest young men and young women. That single experience touched me forever because they run towards the sound of the guns. Here in America, our soldiers have been at war for 17 and a half years while we've been at the mall. And so some of us passively say, I support the troops, and we hook one of those little magnetic bows on our vehicle that say, support the troops, and we think that's enough. With all due respect, in the country club environment, if we're still doing the same old things and just passively saying this is a family-friendly organization, or this has been the same way all these years, this is why we're going to keep it the same all these years, just maybe we're sinking because we're unafraid, or we are afraid to face the music, we're afraid to run towards the sound of the guns, and we're unafraid of the consequences. So I wear this wristband to remind me that I got to do more than just say I support the troops. I've got to back it up with some action. So I made a commitment a long time ago that every single time I saw one of our soldiers in their uniform at a mall or at the airport, I would buy them a meal. I'm going broke. What a drag. When I made that commitment, I didn't realize that they hung around, not by themselves. They hung around with like 4 or 5, sometimes 10 guys or women at a time. I've needed to take that to the next level. Delta Airlines takes really good care of me. I fly first class. I always get a window seat. I don't bother anybody. Nobody bothers me. It's where I've written most of my books, where I write a lot of my songs. So I'm sitting there in my window seat in my own little world. They've already, served the beverages. And as the passengers come on board the plane, there's congestion, and there's a soldier who stops in the aisle right next to me. He's in his full uniform, his BDU, so I chat him up. I say, how you doing? He says, great, sir. I said, are you coming or going? He says, I'm just coming back. I said, where you been? He says, I've been in Iraq for 15 months. I said, I bet you're excited to see your family. He said, yes, sir, I am. I said, I want to swap you seats. He said, no, sir, that's not necessary. I said, I know it's not necessary, but it's the least I can do. Come on, swap me seats. The flight attendant overhears me. Mr. Clark, that's really nice of you. I said, it's not really nice of me. It's the least I can do. Come on, swap me seats. Give me your ticket. So he sits in my seat, and I go to the back of the plane. I'm wandering around. I'm looking for his seat. Wouldn't you know it? He's sitting in the center seat between 2 chubby guys. I slide in, excuse me, I sit down. I'm like, oh no. This is a 4.5-hour flight, and already I felt like I sat on the seatbelt. Are we not all guilty? We make this wonderful commitment. This is how it's going to be when we leave the conference. This is what it's going to happen. And as soon as we get the first irate board member, first time we get the first complaint from somebody who says, oh, the dues are way too high, or you only talk about golf, or all the other ridiculous complaints that might come from somebody in this audience. The second we're confronted with anything like that, we fold. We're like, oh, what a drag. Yeah, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. What allows us to snap out of that is to be real. I'm focused on the negative. Suddenly I'm like, man, I'm so old. I bend over to pull up my socks, and I think, what else can I accomplish while I'm way down here? I start thinking about the nights I go to bed healthy and I wake up injured. Does that ever happen to you? All we do is lay there. You wake up, your hips asleep, your foot hurts. You're like, hey, what's going on around here? I'm starting to stretch out so something might happen at 2 a.m. Immediately I was sensitive to Kevin's hair. That's perfect because I'm losing mine right here, and I'm growing it in places I don't even need it. It's not a fair trade-off. My only hope is that the hair in my right ear will grow long enough I can comb it up over the top of my head. Fake all of you out. Are we not all guilty? We have these magnificent plans. You're going to leave this conference so pumped with education and networking, and you're going to slide into your country club in the first board meeting. You're going to go, oh no, not again. But as I sat there wallowing in my misery and my negativity, I started thinking, you know what? Between April and about October, it's 140 degrees downtown Baghdad. I've been there. And on top of that, these soldiers are wearing 85 pounds to 125 pounds of combat gear. What right do I have to complain about a bad back or an inconvenience between 2 guys? And suddenly I start appreciating what I have and the opportunities we have in the free world. And I start sitting up And sure enough, within a couple of minutes, the guy sitting next to me comes wandering to the back of the plane. We get eye contact. I said, "What's up?" He says, "You made us all feel guilty." I said, "Why? What happened?" He said, "The next soldier who got on board the plane, I gave him my seat." I said, "Good for you." I said, "Let me help you find your new one." And yes, there is justice. Wouldn't you know it, he's sitting in the row right in front of me in the center seat between two chubbier guys. He starts saying, "Whoo," he's so stuck he can't even turn around to keep complaining. And by the time we took off, there were 4 guys from first class who are now sitting in the back of the plane where we should have been in the first place to honor our brave servicemen and servicewomen. And here's the kicker to my story, which I want you to know, because it ties into your responsibility as a country club manager. People are watching. We can't just practice what we preach. We have to preach only what we practice. Because wouldn't you know it, I check into my hotel that night. The next morning I shower, I shave. I show up to the ballroom. It's a huge convention about the same size as this one. And wouldn't you know it, the gentleman who introduces me is one of the 4 guys sitting in first class who saw me give up my seat, who followed suit. And that, my friends, built my credibility as a speaker far more than just some typed out introduction. I've never forgotten that. May we be who we say we are. And the solution then is inside of us. It's already inside of your organization. It's already inside of your country club. All we have to do is hang around with the right people who will remind us. So in the remaining time, what I want to do is I want to be the speaker, the kickoff speaker that builds a box. Answers are in the box. I want to give you the container wherein you can take this entire conference home with you. All the facts, all the feelings, all the emotion, all the networking, all the new connections, all the ideas, so that you can immediately implement it, not just in your professional life and responsibilities, but more importantly and first and foremost, in your personal life. Cornerstone number 1, you got to believe in the power of stretch. I just made a segue between the word change and stretch. Why? Change seems so forced, so unwelcome, but stretch is something that's proactive. Yeah, we love to stretch. To illustrate cornerstone number 1, I snapped my Achilles tendon playing basketball with the guys on my street trying to be 20 years old again. The gentleman who operated on my ankle, his name is Dr. Jim Morgan. He was actually playing in the game. He denies it, but I believe with all of my heart that he came up from behind me in the game and said, "I need a new boat," and he pushed me down. He surgically reattached my Achilles tendon, put it in a plaster cast for 3.5 months. I got the cast off and I was immediately placed into physical therapy. And have you ever been in physical therapy? Physical therapy teaches us 2 things that are relevant to every meeting, especially this conference on country club managers. I go into the physical therapist's office, he warms up my ankle. Then he takes the tip of my foot and he bends it and stretches it to a place it's never ever been before. And as I'm sitting there hanging on with visions of sugar plums pinballing around in my head, he lets go. And it flips back into the exact same spot it was in before he started to stretch me. Wouldn't that be a complete waste of your time, of your money, of your life that we'll never ever relive again? If we as speakers and presenters do everything we know how to do to stretch you intellectually and emotionally, and you just leave this Marriott World Resort, go home and flip on back into the exact same spot you're in before you arrived here, most of the time, that's what happens in meetings, and that's why we discount the power of meetings. That's why some of these chairs are vacant, and they did not see the value in the sacrificing of funds to come here. Congratulations that you did. Which validates the second thing we learned from physical therapy. You have to stretch before you strengthen, and here's the kicker. All the strengthening occurs in the area past the point of discomfort. Now, I know a lot of superstar athletes. I know a lot of superstar professionals. May I be so bold as to throw myself onto your heap, Mr. Lund, Mr. Carroll? We have the ability to push ourselves to the point of discomfort all by ourselves. But I know of no one who has the ability to push themselves into the area past the point of discomfort all by themselves. That's your leadership role as a manager with your board. Don't let them boss you around even though they think that's their job. At some point, we need to take charge in a leadership capacity from an inspirational, passive perspective, obviously, but to lead the way in the sense of stretching ourselves so that they are inspired to also stretch them. To illustrate, may I invite you into my favorite world of music? Are any of you musicians? A few hands. For those of you who are not musicians, if someone asks you how many notes are there in music, it's an international language, just like a smile. Most people count A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Most respond there are 7 notes in music. Contraire, mon frère. In the year 1685, a very famous music composer in Western Europe, he decided he wanted more options. He's the guy that put the black keys on the piano. If you look at the 88 keys on a keyboard, there are 7 white keys and 5 black keys. 12 total notes in music. Isn't that a sad report card on our assessment of society, our assessment of what matters most? Most of us only focusing on the major notes. How many notes? Well, there's 7. Hey, what about the minor notes? My family, we spent a lot of time at Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And I've always dreamed about climbing that 14,000-foot peak called the Grand Teton. My first attempt, why didn't I make it to the summit? Was it because of the giant boulders on the path? No, it was the pebble in my shoe. It's the tiniest screw that stops the giant grandfather clock. It's the little things at your country club that seem to escalate and blow things out of proportion. Am I not correct? Yeah, you're nodding your heads. There are 12 notes in music, and the small, insignificant minor notes are just as significant as the major notes. And how does that relate to you, and how does it relate to me? Every single song written in any language is written with the same 12 notes. Do you know this? The only difference between one song and another song is the order in which those 12 notes fall and the timing and spacing in between the notes. I wish I had a boombox up here. I could put on a magnificent display from the world of music to make my point. We could play a Rachmaninoff piano concerto using all 88 keys on the piano. We could play a little Wynton Marsalis smooth jazz. I'm a rhythm and blues guitar player. We could play a little Stevie Ray Vaughan, a little B.B. King. We could play a country ballad like My Wife Ran Off with My Best Friend and I'm Going to Miss Him Dearly. Are any of you into country music? I'm a country songwriter. Go to Nashville, Tennessee about every 6 weeks. My best song so far, had I shot you when I met you, I'd be out of jail by now. Are you with me? You understand what's going on here? Every single one of these songs in all genres were written with the same 12 notes. So what's the question of the day, especially as a country club manager? The question is, what's the difference between a hit songwriter and a lousy songwriter? They have access to the same 12 notes. What's the difference between a great manager and a lousy manager? You have access to the same opportunities, the same economy, same recessionary period. What's the difference between a great banker and a lousy banker? They have access to the same economy, the same interest rates. As I shared before, I drive 45 minutes one way to bank, and never once have I ever asked what the interest rates are on my loans. As I said, if money becomes the topic of conversation, if it's about dues and how expensive it is, the relationship is non-existent and the presentation is very weak. What's the difference between a great parent and a lousy parent? Any of you have teenagers? Those years where it's all we can do to let our parents live at our house? Are you having this brain damage? Try to introduce a word like curfew to our teenagers. What do they say? Come on, Mom, lighten up. You want me home by midnight? My friends get to stay out till Saturday. What's the difference between a hit songwriter and a lousy songwriter? The answers are in the box. Passion, creativity, and imagination. We've gone full circle, my friends. At the end of the day, it's not what we do, it's with whom we do it. The purpose of this conference is to trigger more passion, creativity, and imagination so we can walk out of here different than we were when we arrived. Why? Because reason leads to conclusions. It is emotion that leads to action. Let me illustrate. Any of you into country music? Cool. A few embarrassed hands. That's good. I had my first gold record in country music with a guy by the name of Michael Peterson. We wrote a song called Drink, Swear, Steal, and Lie. Yeah, I'm an inspirational genius. Teamed up with a great songwriter, Don Schlitz. He wrote You Say It Best When You Say Nothing at All. He wrote The Gambler for Kenny Rogers. Gave him a story, put a great melody to it. Little boy in his baseball hat stands in a field with his ball and bat. He says, I'm the greatest. He throws the ball up, swings, misses strike one, throws the ball up, swings, misses strike two, throws the ball up, swings, misses strike three. He's out. What does he say? Man, am I a good pitcher. It's a good song. Best song I've ever written, I think. Love song. It's called Real Man. Visualize Faith Hill singing it, not me. I need a man who knows happily ever after is a day-at-a-time proposition. A man who knows making love is not a 3-minute composition. It's a slow dance full of romance, a walk on the beach in the sand. It's having a whole conversation just by holding my hand. He would stir deep desire that sets me on fire to be with them all that I can. No, I won't settle for anything less than a real man. Chorus. A real man strong in stature, firm in faith, and kisses slow. He sometimes cries, and when we hug, he's the last one to let go. Worshiping the ground I walk on, he's my biggest fan. There's nothing like being loved by a real man. Most of the women here in the audience are looking at me like, these ladies from South Africa are looking at me like, do you mind if we smoke? Oh, Dan, could you repeat that one chorus part? Yeah. And most of you gentlemen are looking at me like, oh, perfect. I was interviewed on country radio in Nashville, Tennessee. They said, how does a linebacker write a song like that? I said, it was easy. I made a list of things I wasn't, and I decided I could become them. Not because it's expected by others, but because it's demanded of myself. If you're really not just going to survive this recession, but thrive in the aftermath as you've gone through the wilderness, we must become more passionate, creative, and imaginative in the way we interact with our board members. We must institute massive changes in the attitude and the perception of what's going on in your country club. You must become masters of marketing because no longer is this a recessionary-proof industry. The luxury of having people come to you, build it, and they will come is a complete foregone conclusion. It's so obsolete. May we start figuring out new ways to attract the new generation and still keep the integrity and the expectation that we experience at Augusta National in place, but make it family-centered. And how do we do that? How do we stretch? Cornerstone number 2, how do we stretch? Is it through programs? No. Is it through money? No. We can change the attitude. We can start attracting this new generation without one dime, without spending $1. It just comes from the understanding of where those individuals are so that we can actually have something for them to make your resort atmosphere, to make your country club a destination instead of just a weekend deal. You know, the old school without stepping on any toes. Good old boy comes home. He announces to his family, yeah, I'm going to join this country club and play golf. And his wife says, you know what, honey? I have a great job. And we have 2 kids. What's in it for us? How is this going to attract the entire family with discretionary income? How can we figure it out? And you know that right now, the usury of your country clubs is higher, and the spending per person is pretty low. Somehow we got to figure out a way to balance that out, and it comes from cornerstone number 2. How do we do that? It's not through programs. It's not through technology. What if we allow technology to completely overrun us and you go to your doctor's office tomorrow and there's no human being? All you get is a recording. If your pain's below the waist, press 1. Is that where we're headed? What if you're Catholic and they put the entire confessional system on voicemail? 1-800-FESS-UP. If you're into bigamy, press 2. If you're worshiping the devil, press 666. Is that where we're headed with this? Now, it's still about people, and it begins with the manager. To illustrate, as Kevin mentioned in my introduction, one of my stories was made into a film at Paramount Studios starring Jack Lemmon. I wrote the story when I was 13 years of age, part of an essay speech competition. I only bring up that history because as I became a professional speaker and realized the power of words and the importance of emotional words, I took the story to Jack Lemmon, one of my favorite actors. He decides he wants to make it part of his legacy of leadership that he leaves behind. What is your legacy of leadership that you'll leave behind? In the Salt Lake Country Club, T. Branca was a pro there for probably 30 years, so well respected. His son Ron is now the pro. What is your legacy of leadership? Alan Lum, his legacy lives while he does. It's so cool. And so must yours and so must mine. The story is simple because it illustrates Management 101, Teaching 101, Marketing 101. The only place from which a person can grow is where he or she is. We have to go where they are physically and emotionally. Only there can we gently invite them to improve. We have to go where they are physically and emotionally. Only there can we gently invite them to buy. We must become marketing masters and go where they are, not the baby boomers who are already members. We have to go where the new generation is. The generational warfare does not have to take place. We go where they are. And to illustrate, the story is very simple, and I'm very proud. It's won 22 film festivals, aired first at the Sundance Film Festival in my backyard. A store owner was tacking a nail in a sign above his store door which read, "Puppies for sale." Signs like that have a way of attracting small children, and sure enough, a little boy appears at the store owner's side. Instead of me telling you the rest of the story, I thought it'd be fun for you to watch a 2-minute clip. Please pay particular attention to Jack Lemon's eyes, because he validates once and for all that one person in one moment in time, connecting at that heart-to-heart level, going where they are, not expecting them to come where we are, will change forever if we just simply take time to understand. If I can ask you to look at the conference screens.
Well, hey there, old-timer. What can I do for you?
How much are you selling the puppies for?
The puppies, we're selling the puppies anywhere from $25 to $50.
I have $10.37. Can I please look at them?
You want to look at them? Well, sure. Chloe, bring out the brood.
What's wrong with that little puppy?
That little puppy, the vet said he was born without a hip socket. That means he's always going to be slow and he's always going to have a limp.
And that's the puppy you want to buy.
What?
That's the puppy I want to buy.
Well, you don't want to buy that puppy. It's... Look, well, if you really want that puppy, then I'll give him to you.
I don't want you to give him to me. That little puppy right there is worth every little bit as much as all the other puppies in here. I don't pay full price. I can give you $10.37 now and pay $2 a month until I haven't paid for it.
Yeah, but you still don't want to buy that puppy. It's never going to be able to run and jump and play with you like the other puppies.
Well, I don't want to all myself, and the little puppy will need someone who understands and cares for him.
Son, the puppy's yours. $2 a month is fine.
Thanks. How many of you are emotionally moved in 2 minutes and 19 seconds? That's why you're here. That's why you're a country club manager. That's why you put up with everything, and why you're so passionate, creative, and imaginative in your job. The idea, remember, is to remind each other that you already have it inside of you. That's why you're at this conference, to just figure out a way to take it to the next level. Not because it's expected by others, but because it's demanded of ourselves. Cornerstone number 3, so why do it? Why? Some of you are pretty comfortable. Things have been going well. You've been kind of a mainstay of your country club for 1,000 years, and so have your members. Why? Why? Well, we've partially answered it with the song Real Man, just because we can. Once we answer why, figuring out the how-to is pretty simple. May I just illustrate with my personal story, and I'll make it very, very quick because I don't want to bore you. It happened so long ago. I played American football for 13 years. One day in practice, the dream ended. We had a tackling drill. Coach blew the whistle. 2 of us ran into each other full speed. The only parts of our bodies that made contact, Lyle's helmet hit my right shoulder and my neck, and we fell to the ground. When he got off of me, my eye drooped. I had loss of speech. I couldn't talk anymore. My right side was paralyzed. My arm dangled at my side. Coach comes running over. Clark, you all right? What happened? He says, wow, you from New Jersey? I'm just kidding you. He says, whoa, you better just lay there. I said, whoo. A doctor that was present on the field, he came over and he examined me. He pulls the coach aside. He says, Clark's got serious nerve damage. In fact, he might even have serious brain damage. Coach looks at him and says, how will we ever know? Nice guy. Finally, my eye went back to normal. My speech came back. I could basically talk again, but my right side stayed paralyzed. My arm dangled at my side. I talked to it and it wouldn't move. It scared me to death. Fast forward, I hit rock bottom. My dreams were shattered. My heart was broken. Turns out I wasn't just paralyzed physically, I was paralyzed emotionally. Ever felt like that? What happens when we start believing we're depressed? What happens when we start thinking we're depressed? We're depressed. And if you notice, miserable being finds other miserable being, then they are happy. So a lot of people in retrospect want to know, why did I stay paralyzed for a whole year and how did I get better? The answers are very, very simple, my friends. The reason why I stayed paralyzed for a year was because I was asking the wrong questions. Are you? You see, I was asking the doctors how to get better when I should have been asking myself, why should I get better? Because once we answer why, figuring out the how-to is pretty simple. Why must you now understand your potential members in a different way? Why must you interact with your stodgy board members in a different way? Why must you understand that we can still keep the sacred cows in place, no cell phones at this area, no jeans and in a coat and tie in this area? We love to dress up. We love to have high expectations. We love to have people raise our bar because most people will only jump 12 inches high unless they're inspired to jump higher, even when they're CEOs. So once we answer why, figuring out the how-to is pretty simple. And the reason why I got better was because I was asking better questions, which gave me better answers. And again, now in retrospect, I love to share with my audiences that, do you realize that my injury was one of the best things that ever happened to me? Now, my accident wasn't one of the best things that happened to me, but what I learned about myself and who I became as a man is one of the best things that ever happened to me. So don't waste a good recession. Adversity introduces us to ourselves. No one will ever know how good we can become until we're tested, until we're stretched. So we've just gone from 2008 now into 2011. We've got to be better. We've got to be more passionate. Creativity, imagination is just flowing through our veins. It was a good thing. And because it's a good thing, it reminds us of how we need to be as human beings. Because when we identify ourselves in terms of what we do, management, versus who we are, we become a human doing instead of a human being. Unacceptable of success is what we seek. That's the power of this educational conference, and especially the power of the networking. So you really can look left, look right, and say, whoa. When the water in the lake goes up, all the boats rise together, and I'm glad I'm here. I'm reminded of one of my favorite all-time human beings that inspired me. And when I speak on country clubs, if I can ever come to your own country club and talk about team building or even speak to your community, what fun is that? Because country clubs, especially the residential clubs and those members who have been around for so long, are obviously in their retirement years, spending their discretionary income on the life of luxury they've dreamed of. I love to talk about my friend that I met in college. I'm a dumb football player. My cholesterol count's higher than my SAT scores. And it's the first day of chemistry class, so I just figured I was going to flunk chemistry. Let's just get on with the program. And I come late to class in this giant auditorium. I'm sitting about 3 rows from the back of the auditorium with my buddies. Only a couple people sitting behind us. And all of a sudden the professor walks in. He stands up to the podium. And he says, I want you to introduce yourself to someone that you've never met before. What a classic challenge for all of you. It's so fun for me to read and accumulate interesting and odd statistics. I read one that 1 out of 3 Americans is ugly. I'm sure you've seen that from Spain. I'm sure you've seen that from South Africa. That just cracks me up. So look at the person sitting on your left. Look at the person sitting on your right. If they're both pretty good looking, let's talk. So I'm sitting there in the class, minding my own business, and the professor says, I want you to introduce yourself to someone that you've never met before. Before I can even move, before I can even make a move, there's a hand on my shoulder. I turn around, it's an 87-year-old woman. Her name is Rose. She says, hey, handsome, want to get lucky? I say, yo, baby, I am all yours. And we start to talk. I said, what are you doing in college at 87 years of age? She says, find a rich husband, settle down, retire, travel, have a couple of kids. We became the best of friends. Every single day after class, we would walk across campus and we would share a chocolate milkshake at the Student Union building. Rose became an icon on our campus. As she would travel around campus and attend class after class after class, at least once a day, she would stop to rest her weary legs. It was always in the middle of campus at the library plaza, huge fountain, wind blowing the mist into our faces. And within moments, 100 to 200 college students would be sitting at the feet of Rose, basking in her wisdom. What do they say? Wisdom is a gift of the elderly. What do they say? When an old woman dies, an entire library burns to the ground. I promise you, if you just invite your members to take turns holding court and sharing their wisdom, they will feel more than loved. They will feel needed, and it doesn't matter what happens. They will continually support you as that manager, as that leader, and get everybody else to do the same. It really is more simple than we're making it. Rose, I'll never forget. Melody was her name, bald hair, bald head, lost her hair through chemotherapy, radiation treatment, battling leukemia. And yet in the midst of all of us, with all the wannabes, the low achievers, those who were down and out, I'd been there with my paralysis. You see, I thought I was depressed, and then I realized there's a giant difference between being depressed and being disappointed. Huge difference between being depressed and being discouraged. So here are the disappointed and discouraged and all the high achievers like you sitting here, and yet Rose had a message that was applicable to all of us. That's what I'm trying to do today. The answers are in the box. And she pointed out Melody and said in front of all of us, Melody, it really is true. It's not what you do, it's with whom you do it, right? Is there a giant difference between is there a giant difference between living with cancer and dying with cancer? What's it going to be, and what's it going to be for you? Rose was so magnificent, we had her speak at our football banquet at the end of the year. Now visualize Rose, 87 years young, flaming red auburn hair, always wore a hat with a plume, kind of a Bette Midler on steroids. And I introduced her to our football banquet. She steps up to the podium. She's so nervous she starts to shake. She drops her speech. 3x5 cards go all over the floor. And in that moment in time, Rose reminded us about the lessons of leadership. With her speech all over the floor, Rose reminded us that adversity introduces us to ourselves. Rose reminded us that we'll never know how good we can become until we're tested. With her speech all over the floor, what does Rose do? How does she respond? Not react, respond. When a physician gives us medication, we have a reaction, that's negative. When we have a response, it means the medication is assimilating into our bloodstream, and it's good, it's proactive, it's stretching. With her speech all over the floor, how is Rose going to respond? She steps up to the microphone and she says, I'm sorry, I'm so nervous. I gave up beer for Lent, and this whiskey's killing me. She says, I don't remember what my speech said. Let me just tell you what I know. She said, carpe diem with humor, seize the day with a good laugh. Do you? When people come into your presence, do they leave smiling? You don't have to tell them some stupid joke, but they just feel better about themselves because you take yourself with a grain of salt. My mother came to hear me speak the other day. It was so wonderful. She's on the front row. She's 82 years old. What an honor to have her in the audience, but our relationship is such that I had to nail her a little bit. Said, Ruby, it's so good to have you here in the audience. Was gracious, they acknowledged. I said to my mom, even at 82, she inspires me. She went to the doctor the other day, had a physical. The doctor says, Ruby, you need more exercise. So she signed up for an aerobics class for seniors. And sure enough, she bent over, twisted and turned, jumped up and down, sweat like a pig for over an hour. But by the time she got her leotard on, the class was over. And my mom's on the front row, you're not funny. That's not true. Let's take ourselves with a grain of salt. I'm on an airplane. This woman is staring me down. I got really full of myself. Has that ever happened to you? I'm like, wow, she recognizes me. Maybe I'll sign a book. Maybe I'll sign a football card. She says, may I ask you a personal question? I said, yeah. She said, aren't you that professional tennis player that used to be a woman, except now you're a man? I went on board that, I went in that lavatory and I'm like, man, I got to get some work done, man. Then Rose got as serious as a speaker could get. Visualize the audience, a sea of testosterone steroid poster children. And what does she say to us? Young men, as I've been walking around this campus this year, I've noticed how many young college guys are still wearing their old high school athletic letter jackets. She said, I wanted to come up behind each one of you, tap you on the shoulder and say, excuse me, I know you used to be a stud, muffin, hunk of burning love, but when your horse dies, dismount. She says, you got to stop living in your past. Are any of you guilty? Yeah, let's wake up, managers. Let's come to the party. Rose concluded her speech by sitting down at the piano and playing that magnificent ballad made famous by Bette Midler called The Rose. 2 weeks later, Rose walks across that stage to receive her university diploma, making a lifelong dream a reality. Never underestimate the power of a dream. You have dreams for sale at your country club. You have dreams for sale for all ages. It must be family-centered, according to Steve Pedersen, and he's a walking encyclopedia of success right now. Shortly after that, to the day, Rose, having believed in her heart of hearts that she ran the race, that she won the fight, that she left her legacy of leadership behind, that she touched everybody's heart and made everybody better, Rose passed away peacefully in her sleep. And over 2,000 college students attended her funeral to pay tribute to this amazing human being who never did anything famous, never made a lot of money. She just made everybody else around her better. May we all be Rose and pay tribute to the Roses who are members of your country club by inviting them to share their wisdom, and in the process creating that I need you philosophy that spills on down and permeates completely through your membership. Which brings me to cornerstone number 4 in my conclusion. So when do you stretch? Is it when you leave here? Absolutely not. Why? We've already talked about it. Outside of these walls is mediocrity and a minimum requirement society. Outside of this convention, no one wants to stretch or change. Well, that creates a dilemma, because if we're committed to stretching and keeping the stretch alive, all the strengthening occurs beyond the point of discomfort. If we're committed to stretching and putting more into our sessions than ever before, and going out of our way to wake up early, stay up late, and interact in the networking sessions and the cocktail parties and all the other things going on, do you realize we are going to change? We are going to stretch, and when we go back home and interact with loved ones who are not here to hear what you hear and feel what you feel, interact with coworkers and especially board members who sense that you're different, they don't want you to be different, because that requires that they must also be different. So the time for change, the time for stretch is right now in the confines of this ballroom before we exit into the exhibitors area. At some point, we've got to start saying, my gosh, I've got to do it right now. I was invited to speak at my old high school. Is that at the top of your dream list? I was intimidated and flattered all at the same time. I'm introduced. I walk out on stage in my high school auditorium. I immediately get eye contact with some of the faculty members who had been teachers when I was a student. You should have seen their faces. Oh, no. Who let him back in here? Those 3 years he was a junior almost killed the whole faculty. They expected me to be that same Danny Clark I was all those years ago. That's what's going to happen when you leave here. Will you be strong enough to not let it happen? They expected me to be the same guy I was when I was 18, but I don't look like I did when I was 18. I don't act like I did when I was 18. That guy is dead. So to conclude, why are you here? When do you stretch? It's right now. And I want to tell you about my dad so you remember it. My dad's my guy. He's my hero. I grew up in a family where he celebrated the significance of the individual, which I thought was very important, especially in my predicament, because I was the odd duck in my family. Can any of you relate? My older brother, Sammy, has 7 degrees from major universities. That's sick. Father of 4 children, successful business owner, successful business operator, never an athlete, dark hair, dark eyes. Older sister, Deborah, graduated from the university in fashion, merchandise, and design, so she sells real estate. Very successful, never an athlete, dark hair, dark eyes. Younger brother, Paul, MBA, Harvard graduate. Lives with his beautiful family in San Francisco, hugely successful investment banker, never an athlete, dark hair, dark eyes. Then me. Then I come into the family tree somewhere in between the other children. The only athlete, 6'5", blonde, blue eyes. Can you see my parents in a social setting? So what does your son Dan do? Oh, he talks. We're so proud. My brother was the valedictorian of his university, he's valedictorian of his high school, he's valedictorian of the Blooming Nursery in the hospital, and I was not on the honor roll every time. One time I came home with a report card, had 4 F's and 1 D on it. My dad's response, son, looks to me like you're spending too much time on one subject. I love my dad, he gets it. My dad battled cancer for 6.5 years. I wanted to be by his bedside when he took his last breath. That didn't happen for me. I was up in Seattle, Washington. I was in town for 2 days to make 2 speeches to 2 large trade associations downtown at the convention center. I'm staying out of town at the Seattle Airport Marriott Hotel. It's Friday morning, October 12th. I've showered, I've shaved, put on my coat, put on my tie, I'm ready for the day. Phone rings. I think it's my ride downtown to the convention center, so I pick up the phone, and I almost flippantly say, I'll be right there. But for some odd reason, I just stood there. About 15 seconds of silence later, my younger brother's voice pierces the quietness of the call. Danny? I said, what's up? He said, Dad passed away this morning at 7 a.m. I said, whoa. Sat down on the edge of my bed, and the tears just started to fall. Let me interrupt. I'd give anything to have my dad back one more day. It's too late. I have regrets. I don't wish regrets on any of you. As an author, I love to interview people. My favorite interview was always with an elderly person, elderly meaning someone older than me. They will always remind us, remember the answers are in the box, they will always remind us that they don't have regrets for things they did do, they only have regrets for things they did not do. Will you while you're at this conference? Will you forevermore? I said, how's Mom? He said, she's all right. I said, give her a big hug and a kiss for me, will you please? Tell her I'll phone her as quickly as I can. And then he asks me the gajillion-dollar question, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? We've got to fire up at this conference so that when we get back, it's going to be easier with the stretch already in place. With the passion, creativity, and imagination already triggered. I said, Paul, Mom and Dad have spent an entire lifetime teaching us 2 principles that are always present in my life. Pressure is not something that's naturally there. It's created when you question your own ability. And when you know what you can do, there's no question, there's no pressure. Crisis does not make or break the man or woman. It just reveals the true character within. This recession has proven to ourselves. It's allowed us to prove to ourselves what we're made of. Awesome opportunity. Don't waste a good recession. I said, so Paul, I'm going to go speak. I'm going to keep my promise. Dad and Mom have spent an entire lifetime teaching us to keep our promises. I can't imagine what it would be like to be a meeting planner with a 90-minute slot to fill, 3,500 people in the audience and not have the speaker show. I can't leave people hanging, can you? No. And then I'm going to spend the night. I'm going to keep my promise on Saturday. Then I'm going to hustle home. God knows I need your support. Hopefully I can give you some of mine. I hung up the phone and I sat there in my hotel room and I openly wept like a wee child. This is my dad, my true hero. 15 minutes later, the phone rings again. This time it is my ride. I tell him I'll be right down. I go into the washroom. I splash some water on my face, try to freshen up to the best of my ability. I leave my hotel room and I get on the elevator. As the elevator doors start to close, the corner of the bellman's cart nudges its way through the opening and they bing back open. And on the elevator comes this way overzealous psycho bellman. I'll never forget him as long as I live. He's pushing his runaway cart onto the elevator. Woo-hoo! He pushes his cart onto the elevator, forces me back to the right rear corner of the elevator, and I assume the elevator position. Doors close, we start going down. He is relentless. Whoa! Did you see the beautiful sunshine? He said, I've lived up here in Seattle, Washington. 15 years, rained every single day. You must have brought the good weather with you. How you doing? I said, I'm fine. You know, when someone's been staring at you for a while and you don't even have to get eye contact, you can just kind of feel it, kind of sense it. All of a sudden he says, hey, mister, you're not fine. You've been crying. I said, yeah. I said, I just found out my dad died this morning and I'm really sad. He said, whoa. Elevator comes to the lobby, doors open. He goes his way. I meet my ride. He drives me downtown to the convention center. I'm introduced and I make my speech. I had to dig deeper than I'd ever dug in my whole entire life to make that speech. But I did it when I was paralyzed. You can do it again. You can if you think you can. The beginning of World War II, Nazis are bombing England. Winston Churchill is forced into an underground bunker, and his only source to keep his people from quitting, to keep his beloved Brits fired up, is a microphone. And what does Winston Churchill say? It is not enough to say, I will do my best. We must succeed at doing that which is necessary. That's the new task ahead, my friends. I got to the end of my speech and I said to the audience, I'd like to conclude with a little song from one of my albums. I said, the reason why I want to sing this little song is because my dad died this morning and it's the first time he's ever heard me sing it in public. And again, I dug deeper than I'd ever dug and maybe sang the song better than I'd ever sung it. I concluded my speech and had the driver take me to the Seattle Aquarium. Why am I now a hypocrite? I originally said we must run towards the sound of the guns. Let's not take our freedom for granted. Let's exceed expectations. And now I'm saying, no, I can't handle it. I'm going to run from change. No. I had the driver take me to the Seattle Aquarium so I could create a meeting. You see why it's an honor and a privilege for me to be here and why you have decided to be here? Away from distractions, away from family, away from all those things that allow us to ask better questions and get better answers. And leave with the resolve that, yes, we will walk on higher ground regardless of the emotional weather around us. We now have each other, and the stretch is alive. So I'm at the aquarium watching the fish swim, watching the otters float on their backs. They reminded me of some of the offensive linemen I used to play ball with. And it was that day that I coined that phrase, pain is a signal to grow, not to suffer. Once we learn the lesson the pain teaches us, the pain goes away. I had the driver take me back to the Seattle Airport Marriott Hotel, and here's where you come into my story. Here's where you either accept or reject my challenge for you to be that flight attendant. To no longer think outside the lines or think outside the box, but to hang around with the right people who will trigger more passion, creativity, and imagination and become more of who we already are because the answers are in the box. You know, golf cracks me up because everybody thinks I need new clubs. No. I lose balls in the ball washer. I had my ball retriever regripped. And I got 2 new books coming out, How to Line Up Your Fifth Putt and awesome second shots off the ladies' tees. But in golf, we know there must be a risk-reward set up, just like in your business. That if I'm down there and I can cut the corner, please give me a favorable pin placement so it was worth the risk. Augusta National, yeah, I parred number 12 and number 13. Won't tell you what the rest of my score was, but it reminded me it's not about golf. It's so much more. I came back to that Seattle Airport Marriott Hotel, and I walked into my hotel room, and there on the dresser of drawers is a basket of fruit. And it's not your basic basket of fruit that's been delivered from the hotel gift shop. We've all seen these little color cellophane, little bow, little sterile stamp card. They never get our names right. Thanks for staying with us, Ralphie. This was the coolest gift I'd ever received. It was a broken, smushed basket. One side was caved in. It looked like it was someone's second thought, maybe after hours, no resources available, but they still wanted to make a difference. I'm sure you can relate. I can see the hotel employee walking through the lobby. They look in the garbage bin. Oh, wow, that's too good to throw away. Whoa. Well, the country club manager will be really proud of us. Do more with less. They retrieved it, took it to my room. Apparently, they were into presentation because they turned the broken, smushed part of the basket towards the wall. Apparently, they'd walked past the big fake tree in the lobby, yanked off one of those fine plastic leaves, stuck that in front of the broken, smushed part of the basket. My basket of fruit, there was a tomato and a big giant carrot and a handwritten card that said, Mr. Clark, I'm sure sorry your dad died. I'm supposed to get off work at 5 o'clock. I've asked to stay on all night long so I can be here just for you. Room service closes at 10 o'clock. The kitchen has agreed to stay open all night long so they can be here just for you. If you need anything, just call and ask for me. Signed, James, the bellman in the elevator. He's not the only guy who signed my little card. Every single hotel employee that night at the Seattle Airport Marriott Hotel signed my little card. I still have it matted and framed, hanging on my office wall to this day. Let's debrief and conclude. Here we have the youngest person in the entire employee payroll who gets it. Guess what? Age has nothing to do with success. We can't pay enough for experience, but age has nothing to do with success. How do we know that? Some of the greatest songs we will ever hear were written by young men and young women. Why? They have access to the same 12 notes that the old folks do. It's about passion, creativity, and imagination. Here we have the lowest paid person in the entire employee payroll. If money becomes the motivator or the topic of conversation or the reason why members are leaving or the reason why members are not joining, shame on us. Let's strengthen the commitment to the community. Let's become more visible as that icon, that rose in the community so people want to come to you because they've heard about you. And the last thing I learned, loyalty. Loyalty. Every single time I speak, I'm always relegated to stay at the property where they have the meeting. Obviously, I'm endeared forever to the Marriott Hotel Corporation. My uncle was the gentleman who performed the marriage for Bill Marriott. Been tied into that family for many, many, many years. I love Marriott Hotel Corporation because of one young man whom I've never seen again. So I'm always relegated to stay at the property where I have the meeting, and thanks for your hospitality. This is a great hotel, eh? Towels in my room are so fluffy, I'm having a hard time getting my suitcase closed. Are you finding that? My car leaves today at about 3. I hope you don't see me in the lobby like, man, is that a robe underneath his jacket? But every single time I speak in Seattle, Washington, I always stay at the Seattle Airport Marriott Hotel, even if I have to rent a car and drive an hour and a half out of my way. Because of one young 18-year-old man who gets it. Gets what? Support. 30-second vignette I close with, which hopefully will put me in your ballpark so that now I'm part of you looking at the stage, looking at this conference, looking at the agenda, anticipating the exhibitor area with new passion, creativity, and imagination to connect and be there for each other just because we can. Before I give you the 30-second vignette, my website is danclarkspeak, danclarkspeak.com. That's not a commercial message. I have a subscription to a free story of the day. If you want one of my funny stories, tear-jerking stories to come on your computer every day, you can use in a little staff meeting or whatever. Please log on and keep in touch. Obviously, I travel the world. I'd love to be able to come in and say hello. And who knows, come and speak to your staff like I did at a couple of country clubs here in Florida. And more importantly, put on an event for your people. Tell them some stories. Get them laughing and crying and appreciating life again. Because it really does boil down to this 30-second vignette. A mother encourages her daughter to come home as soon as school is over. Time comes, time goes. 30 minutes late, her daughter walks in through the front door of her home and her mother scolds her. Where have you been? She says, oh, Mommy. I walked my friend Sally home. She dropped her doll on the sidewalk. I broke all to pieces. It was awful. Her mother said, so you're late because you stayed to help your friend pick up the pieces of the doll and put it back together again? She said, oh, no, Mommy, I didn't know how to fix the doll. I just stayed to help her cry. If that's not the job description of a country club manager, I don't know what is. But just know at this conference, you're not alone. Know that you have icons in Tony and George and Alan. Know that you have an amazing staff in Dr. Jason and Kathy Driggs. Know that you have the wonderful Aaron here in Florida. Know that you have resources like Steve Pedersen. You have each other. The answers truly are in this organization, and I challenge you to do whatever you need to do to be that person so people leave you at the end of this conference really saying, I like me best when I'm with you. I want to see you again. Having met you, I'm a real man, I'm a real woman, and together we rise. With all due respect to our friends from outside of the country, may I just simply say, God bless America. God bless the world. Please remember our troops. They make this conference possible. And you have a wonderful, wonderful day.